Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrive by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 137, we sit down with Peter Treiber Jr., co-founder of Treiber Farms in Peconic. Known for its chemical-free, hand-tended approach, the farm has become a North Fork standout place where sustainable agriculture meets community connection and a hub for creativity. Peter shares how the farm began, what it's like working with his dad, and how they've blended tradition with innovation. We talk about markets, restaurants, produce, and what it means to grow with intention. So I hope you enjoy episode 137 with Peter Treiber Jr. This episode was recorded May 7th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So just in the beginning, could you give us a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. My name is Peter Treiber Jr., and I am originally from the little village of Sea Cliff, New York, which is on the North Shore of Long Island in Nassau County. And I moved to the East End here on the lovely North Fork full-time back in 2016 to help my father start a farm. And yeah, I've been here. This is my 10th season farming, so I've been here ever since. And
wow.
It's a really lovely life. And I still get a lot of people, because I was in Brooklyn beforehand for 6 years, and I still have a lot of people, familiar, friend, family, that ask like, oh, are you full-time? Are you, you ever think about going back to the city? And decidedly not. I really like it out here. It's beautiful. I love nature. I love being outside. Mm-hmm. And I love the life that this place provides. It's really lovely. So,
yes, definitely. Yeah. And could you tell us a little bit how the farm got started, and or even when you were discussing it with your father, if he was thinking about it?
Yeah, so to give a little background on how I even thought about farming was, I think the seed, if you will, was planted many years ago. My dad always kept a really beautiful garden at our home in the suburbs, and I always got to see him, harvesting and sharing his bounty with neighbors and friends and with our family. And that sort of grew as we all got older. It grew. He started keeping bees, planting fruit trees, berries. So there was this sort of subconscious connection that was sort of like deep in there before I ever sort of came around to it. But I had some friends that were farming. I volunteered on some farms back in 2011. And in 2012, I visited some friends on farms. And so there was something about it. I think I'd seen what the lifestyle looked like, and the, understanding the rhythms of nature and cultivating the land and feeding yourself. It was all really appealing to me. Being barefoot in the soil and feeding yourself and feeding others. There's something really appealing about that, and seeing some other friends living that lifestyle. I was really into the idea of making that part of my life. And my dad retired 2013, 2014, and he started looking for land, and he wanted to farm in his retirement. He was never going to move to Boca and, play golf 5 times a week. He's got way too much energy for that. And my mother was on board. She thought they'd get a couple acres, plant some flowers, plant some fruit trees. And it's certainly grown to be way beyond that scale. But in 2014, he purchased the first acreage on the North Road. It's right on the border of Peconic and Southold, but that address is Southold. And he bought 34 acres of protected land. So the development rights had already been sold by the Dorosky family in the early 2000s. And so he started consulting with some neighbors and some other folks about what he should do with the land and how to start getting things going. Started applying for grants for like the deer fencing and things of that nature, and started cover cropping. So sort of, rehabilitating the soil. It hadn't been farmed in at least a decade. It had been laid, fallow for a while. And that was 2014. So he started digging in. He bought a one tractor. He kept it out in the field, installed deer fencing the next couple of years. And, but there was never any discussion that I would go and join him. I was living in Brooklyn. I was working for this artist in this beautiful art center called the Invisible Dog Art Center, which is on Bergen Street, between Smith and Court. And I was working there, and I was doing fabrication and filmmaking, and I had my own little studio starting in 2015. And I didn't really think I'd leave quite so soon. I was only there for 6 years, and my dad was full steam ahead on his own.
He's like, I'll do it.
Yeah, we had never worked before. He was in the insurance business for 40 years. That was the family business. It was called the Treiber Group. Long-standing. It had been around for maybe at that point over 100 years. It started it was the John Treiber Agency. It started in Williamsburg, Brooklyn in 1899, and then moved out to Long Island. So he was doing his thing. He was retired. He was gonna run out there on weekends and mow the cover crop and keep talking about what he might do. And then in 2016 or late 2015, he was talking to a friend of mine who had been farming for years about being the manager of the farm, and him being a really good friend. I thought, maybe I'll just move out there full time and give it a go, try out a season. And that's what I did in May of 2016. So I moved out here full time. And, that first year we just did a lot of infrastructure work. There wasn't a lot of growing and feeding ourselves. There was a lot of, running irrigation and putting up trellis wire and, moving irrigation pipe to water the orchard grass. It was planting blueberries and fruit trees. So it was just like a slow burn, and it was a lot of work, really long hours that first year. And it was really challenging. And unfortunately, the relationship with my friend and my father and I didn't work out. He wasn't a good fit for the manager position. So at the end of 2016, it was just my dad and I. And we thought, as challenging as that first year was, I wanted to see this project through. I really believed in it, as difficult and challenging and stressful and backbreaking as it was. I saw something in it, and we sort of vowed to each other that we would, keep having at it. And it was tough. I'd never worked with my father before. This was new for him. It was new for me. He'd been very successful in the world of business. I was coming from a background of fabrication and building and doing. And so, I came in with some really great applicable skills on how to, repair things and build things. We bought a kit for a greenhouse immediately, which is 30 feet wide by 72 feet long, and all these steel pieces and plastic. And, there was just a lot of butting heads, just coming at things from different angles and perspectives.
Did you know, was it just getting things on the ground and running? Was there discussion on how big you wanted it to?
Yeah, that fluctuated a lot. The initial conversation with the original manager was, we're going to do 10 acres of vegetables. We're going to plant fruit trees. And, some of it, honestly had to do with, like tax assessment stuff. It's like you can own farmland, and if it's in production, you get assessed on the amount of acreage that you're actually producing on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, oh, we can sort of map out the next 5 years with fruit trees, because it takes, sort of that long traditionally for a fruit tree to mature. And then in the meantime, start doing some annual stuff, tomatoes, greens, plant some asparagus, plant some garlic. And yeah, there wasn't really like a cohesive thought on what could be done or should be done, or maybe there was a lot that we thought could be done, but it wasn't really clear. And, we were coming at it from two very different angles, because this was a career change for me. And I moved out here, I was 27.
Okay.
And, my father was retired. He'd already had his career. And so this was fun for him. And, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things right and learn and be successful, to grow a farm operation. But it was to balance all of these different things, to be learning all of these different, all these different varying parts of a farm at the same time as trying to establish something and, create a business. It was a lot. Steep learning curve in the beginning years. So yeah, I mean, even until the last couple of years, I feel like we've only just arrived at an idea of what we are and what we're doing, and sort of been refining for the last 10 seasons, what it is that works for us, what it is that we want, what makes us happy, what makes money. So we've tried a lot of different things. But some through lines have definitely been the fruit. We've always had berries. We've got fruit trees, and the annuals have essentially stayed the same. There's garlic every year, tomatoes, peppers, greens, things of that nature.
You touched on it a bit with your father, and even after, when it was just the two of you working after the other thing didn't work out. But could you talk a little bit more about that, the dynamic between your father, and even how you worked out responsibilities or divided things, and even looking at it today, how it has evolved?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of learning on both our parts, trusting that my father was, and I knew he was a very good businessman and very successful at what he had done in his career. And I don't think he really knew exactly what I did in Brooklyn all those years, or what skills I had accumulated as far as carpentry and fabrication and things like that. So yeah, it was really just sort of feeling each other out. It was really new for us. I mean, we're family, and I'm his namesake, and I'm the only boy in the family, and we're close, but it was a whole new dynamic, and it was definitely working through, past stuff, father to son, son to father. Yeah, it was a lot of like feeling it out and trying to understand what it is that we wanted individually. And, I always wanted him to define his role, and, I wanted clear objectives from him. He's retired. He doesn't really exactly know what he wants, and he doesn't really need to know, like he was doing this as like a passion project. And so it was definitely, feeling each other out and trying to figure out where we both stood, and just trusting one another. And really, I think on his end, like trusting me that I could figure this out, and giving me a pretty long leash to make mistakes and, fall on my face, of which I did a lot. And, that went, from hiring to marketing to all these things, figuring out the branding, where are we selling? What are we selling? Who's working on the farm? Where are these people living? Like all of these things were factors in those early days, and it was all a lot. So yeah, it was really difficult. Truly, especially those first 4 years, it was really difficult, and I really put a lot of pressure on myself to be, good and successful, and to run a tight ship, and to have clean rows with no weeds, and to be harvesting beautiful product and selling as much as we could, where we could, to bring in some income.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also with the farm, you built the farm around a more chemical-free and hand-tended agriculture. What were some of the core principles that guided you, or guided your approach to farming?
We made a decision that first year, 2016, that we would go chemical free as much as we could. It was, two total amateurs getting into relatively large scale farming. And we made a decision. That was one thing we definitely agreed upon early on, is that we can't, in 2016, the world didn't need another conventional farm. And if we had the opportunity and the runway to build infrastructure and build systems where we didn't have to rely on that off-farm inputs, whether that's synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, that we would do that. And I'm really happy we started that way and continue that way. And next week we're having our organic certification interview. So a certifier is coming and walking the farm for a couple hours, and hopefully by the end of it, we'll be certified organic.
Wonderful.
Which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, something that we're both really happy with, because we have, he's got grandchildren, I've got nieces and nephews. There's lots of wonderful wildlife on the farm, dogs, people, and there's never been a moment where I've had to tell someone, hey, don't touch that, don't eat that, don't pick that up off the ground. We sprayed Roundup. So that was an early decision, and that came just from the state of the world and looking around us, both in like the micro and the macro, like looking in our community and then looking beyond. And I always said that it would be nice to be a good example for others, in our community or elsewhere, to see, what sort of, human scale organic agriculture can do. And, we're not feeding the masses, but I think we are doing a good job of taking care of our property. And I feel really good about the ecosystem we've created over there.
Mm-hmm. And also just with the weather and the soil out here, and just getting to know kind of the seasonal environments, did you have any hurdles with just the changing weather or the working with the soil out here?
It was all new, so there was no sort of baseline for understanding what the weather had been like. Or what I did know is that the soil was good. I mean, people have been growing food out here for generations, well before any white person landed on Long Island. And we're in a unique subzone. So, there's the hardiness zones that you can grow in from, I think the lowest is 3 and the highest is 10. And essentially that's all based on the lowest average winter temperature. So we're in zone 7A or 7B. I mean, it's 7B. And that just means we have really mild winters. We have this maritime effect, being surrounded by all the water. So we have a really long growing season for where we are. And it's just good for growing. And it's hot and humid, and it's sunny. And, the rains have definitely been an issue, this past year, and that's why you have irrigation, but it's also nice to not irrigate. I've always been very conscious across the board about use on the farm, whether that's buying in plastic as, irrigation tape or ground cover, landscape fabric, tarps. That was something I came into the farm with, just like, using what we have, recycling, don't irrigate too much, be conscious of how much water we're using. But it's been tough. And we had a drought last fall that I think we were officially out of the drought in January this year. Mm-hmm. So it carried through for months. I mean, we just really had no precipitation. But the idea is that you take really good care of your soil and you create systems and you replenish it with cover crops and not overworking it and not over-tilling it. And if you do that, we make our own compost, we use our own compost, we use mulches. If you can do all of that successfully over the years, you're going to have really healthy, resilient soil, and then in turn, really healthy, resilient plants. And so essentially, you should be in a place where the weather comes and goes and you should be okay. Mm-hmm. You should be more like having a really healthy immune system.
Yes.
The colds, the hots, the dry, the wet, you should be okay. So That's really our focus. Obviously, we can't control the weather, so we can irrigate when we can, but we're also constantly thinking about our greatest asset, which is the soil.
Yes. And then I wanted to talk about just reaching out into the community and even starting events like festivals of trees. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about how that got started?
Yeah, I worked in an art center. I worked on the top 2 floors of this building were 25 artist studios, and the ground floor was a big event space. And I loved the community aspect of that. And when I came out here, I really sort of selfishly missed that. I was like, I want to do things on the farm, and especially art related things. And so I think the second year I was out here, I had music in the barn. I had a friend of mine who's a singer-songwriter from Louisiana, was sort of torn around in his van in the Northeast. And so he came and played. We had some other music that year, but over the years, I've just tried bringing people to the farm. And, there's a lot of farms out here. So how to differentiate ourselves, that's being organic, and that's growing fruit, and that's, I started wholesaling to restaurants to begin with, which was our first way out into the market. And doing things that excited me, which was, whether it's an art show or music or a dinner, or, lending the space to Slow Food East End or Cast or anyone else who really asks. People have had luncheons and birthday parties and wedding showers and all sorts of things on our property. And I love it. It's really nice to bring people and to share the space. I mean, farms have historically always been a community center and a community hub, and where people could gather in a barn and dance or, commune in any sort of way, share stories and music and food. So that started very early on, and my dad's very much a philanthropist and loves to give time and money to people and different nonprofits. So he'd already come in with that background, and our family had definitely been in that space for a while. The Treiber family in general. So he'd been talking to Reverend Roger Jocelyn, and that's how we came about with the common ground, which is the community garden on the farm. Yes. And all the food from those 40 raised beds goes to Cast, and it's all run by volunteers, which is really great. And that's something that's been refined and fine-tuned over the last few years. And I think we're going to grow the most amount of food this year for Cast than we have in the past, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And Yeah, we're open to the community, and we like to be a part of it. We love being out here. We love living out here, and we love to give back. If you've got the time and the space and the energy, do it. So
Yes.
that was an early adoption, just opening the space up to bring people together. And, most things we put on are free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. And every time we've had music or an art show or something of that nature, people, unsolicited, come and say, "Hey, thank you for doing this." They'll find me or my dad, and they're really grateful to have something different to do out here. And so that's enough feedback for us to keep doing what we're doing.
Was that even with the Common Grounds project? Was that you and your father gave land for the community to basically have a community garden?
Yeah, they asked for some space, and we had it. It's right next to our high tunnel, right on 48. It's roughly 50 by 100.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told my dad the deal was that I couldn't run it.
You're like, I'm not doing enough.
I have enough garden to take care of. But, we pitch in here and there if they need, like I just moved some lumber over there that got delivered. And, it's a dance. The well for the water, the sprinklers over there is always acting up. And we used to start all the seeds for them in our greenhouse, and then people would come and take the wrong seed trays and whatever. So it's a dance, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love having folks on the property, and it's great to look out there. And some days there's 20 cars. People come for a big day of cleanup or prepping the beds or planting or harvesting, and Reverend Roger will be out there giving a blessing over the beds. And I think it's fantastic. We had the space, and it's probably been like 6 or 7 years now that they've been doing it.
Yeah. And then you mentioned even wholesaling or out to restaurants, well-regarded restaurants. How did those relationships come about, and how does it feel seeing your ingredients on the menus out here, or even just wherever?
Yeah, we sell locally exclusively. I've done some things in the city, and I've done some things slightly further up island. One day I'd love if we could get some sort of cooperative van. I've got some oyster farmer friends, other flower growers, vegetable growers. If we could figure out a way to get our products into deeper into or further west, Suffolk County, Nassau County, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, I would love that. But for now, in our little seasonal community, we have some really great restaurant clients, and that began in 2017. We didn't have a roadside stand, which is pretty typical out here. There was no farmers market. There was still a little farmers market in Greenport, and I think at that point it was in the IGA parking lot, and then they moved it out by the skate park, and then eventually in 2018 it was indoors at the Ice House, and then it ceased to exist. But I'll get back to the farmers market in a second. So I went to the North Fork Table and Inn, which was still owned by Claudia Fleming, and the chef there was Stefan Bogardus, and I brought her some berries in the summer of 2017, and she's like a really well-regarded pastry chef, and she was in their food truck at the time, and I brought her some berries, and she tried them, and she was like, "Bring me everything every week for the rest of the summer." I was like, wow, this is easy. First client. She wants all my fruit for the rest of the summer, and she was really patient and really understanding that I was really like very new to this, and I was picking at all hours of day and night trying to fill orders and make things work, and learning how to wash and pack vegetables in a way and store them in a way that's gonna keep and all that. and that's delivering a good, clean, healthy product. And so it began there, and that was, the first inroad into marketing our goods. And that's pretty much what we did for the next number of seasons. I did some like little tiny roadside stands, different versions out in front of our barn by the flag truck. But nothing really solid or sedentary. It was always sort of moving. And, that first summer, I think I had 14 different restaurants that I sold to at least once. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it being super busy, for 90-ish days out here. Some chefs got busy, stopped ordering. Some chefs ordered all summer. And so it kind of whittled down. And I was really enamored with the idea of being in the best places and places that I liked or places that were well regarded and seeing the name on the menu. I'll say now, I also appreciate our goods being on really good menus. But what my farm manager and I want the most is really good communication with the chefs and consistent ordering and just good relationships and good people. Yeah, that's paramount. And so right now we're working with the folks at Silver Sands and Leon 1909 on Shelter Island, and with a private chef who does events, whose name is Chef Ryan Carroll, who lives in Mattituck, but he does events in the city and all over the place. So right now and then we'll work with Taylor Knapp of the Paw Paw Pop-Up as well. Mm-hmm. And then, deeper into the season, we'll get in touch with Robbie Beaver at the Frisky Oyster. That's okay. And Little Fish was a great client last year as well, over in Southold. So we've got our wholesale accounts, and we really like working with these chefs. Silver Sands is new this year. Leon has been our best for the last number of years, and I'd say I haven't eaten a lot of places in the Hamptons, but I think Leon is the best of the best on the East End, as far as quality and the dining experience, and the quality of cooking happening there. It's really incredible, and the space is beautiful. It's on Shelter Island.
Yeah.
So we've got the wholesale, we've got on-farm retail, which is new in the last 3 years. We converted one of the little barns into a little farm store. It's basically self-help farm store. There's a fridge, there's a freezer, there's dried goods, there's jarred goods. We fill up the fridge every week. And in the height of the season, it'll be open 7 days a week. Right now, it's just weekends.
Is that just people donate?
People just pay.
Pay and then go.
They take their stuff. So there's a cash box with the Venmo code, and you can leave your cash. So it's an unmanned farm stand.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of those out here. Deep Roots does it, and
I almost think of that as something of the past more, but it's nice to see that still happening.
Yeah, it's a thing, and it works, for now. I'm happy, and it's not a very big space, so it's not like I could actually even fit a human in there to work it all day, nor would I want to pay someone to do that. But we're working with a baker this year that's going to be dropping off fresh bread every Friday. She's going to be able to pick that up. 1610 Sourdough is her name.
Okay.
So she drops off at a bunch of different places. Sangley, Alley Cat's Kitchen. She'll be at the Greenport Farmers Market as well. And then we might have some oysters from an oyster farmer, just like a few bags every week. And then we have some friends that are fishermen on Shelter Island, Clark's Seafood, that's likely going to be leaving a cooler there with fresh fish every week. So sort of always expanding our retail experience for folks. And, I like to do a one-stop shop. We won't have everything, but we do carry local beef and our products, some oysters, some fish, some bread, all of our jarred goods, pickles, jams, tomato sauce, things like that. So great on-farm retail experience, some merch as well, sweatshirts if you want to rep Treiber Farms. And then we have the Greenport Farmers Market, which Brooke, my farm manager, and I approached the mayor here in Greenport 2 years ago in the winter about revitalizing some sort of farmers market. And he was super gung-ho. And he found us a market manager, a local, Paul Livesey?
Yes, I think.
I've actually never...
I know it's Paul.
Yeah, Paul. And his wife does all of the curating.
Sally.
Yeah, does all the curating.
Sally
there.
Grant.
Yeah. So the mayor introduced us to Paul, and we did all the paperwork and the permitting, and we went before the village board, and I think we presented once in public, and then Paul went back 1 or 2 more times, and we got approved. And last summer, we had our first farmers market in years, since 2018, and it was outdoors in Mitchell Park every Friday for 20 weeks, and it was incredible. And I was over the moon that we did it and that we're doing it again this year. And folks are always surprised to hear from Riverhead to Orient. There's like an indoor market in Riverhead, but I'm not necessarily counting that. There is no farmers market.
Mm-hmm.
There's one in every town in the Hamptons. From West Hampton to Montauk, there's a farmers market in every hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes 2 per week.
Yes.
And there was 0 on the North Fork. And we have all the farms.
Yeah, I think it was like there were the farm stands, but it'd be nice to have a place where people could just come together and everyone work as a community.
Exactly. And anywhere I go in the world, I'm looking for a farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what folks are growing. I want to chat with people. I want to see who's walking around. And it's just nice. Mm-hmm. And this is what we were saying when we were pitching the idea. It's just nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see your neighbors. It's nice to see the people producing your food and have a one-stop shop. It's on this beautiful hardscaped area on the water. Mm-hmm. You know, you got the carousel on one side, you got the water on the other side, Aldo's, all the shops and everything. I mean, it's just a really phenomenal place to be when the weather's nice. And yeah, I for us on a business side to be marketing ourselves and be letting people know like what is it that Treiber Farms does is incredible. To be pushing people like, hey, if you're not here on Fridays, our farm store is open 7 days a week. And also look at all these other wonderful businesses you can support. But yes, again, selfishly, I want to go to a farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go, someplace every week and see what's fresh and see what's new and see that, people not everyone has an opportunity to have a farm stand. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of farms that Paul has approached to be a part of the farmer's market are still have no interest.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we leave? We've got our retail store on the main road or the North Road. It works for us. Why would we want to pack up and move product and pay somebody to be there, take the time and effort to pack your stuff, set up, work for a few hours, break down, go home, re-refrigerate, repack, whatever. But I think it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And I'm so, so, so proud of everyone involved for making it happen and for, getting it started. I think it's so fantastic on so many levels. And I'm just over the moon about it. And I'm really excited for it to start up in Memorial Day weekend. That's the first market. And I think we're going to end, there's some flexibility to end a little bit earlier this year because it was definitely really quiet September into October.
Okay.
But it was a smash hit for us as a farm, for sure.
Okay.
And,
wonderful.
Yeah. So that's finishing off. That's our sort of 3-pronged approach to marketing ourselves. We have the wholesale, on-farm retail, and then the farmer's market.
Yes. And then is there one product or crop that you enjoy producing the most, or you just enjoy growing that particular crop?
Yes. I think, each year I sort of fall in love with the process all over again. I mean, it is truly capital A awesome and capital M miraculous, the seed to plant transformation, the potential energy of a seed going into soil with some water and some sun and growing into a 40-foot long squash vine with 30-pound fruit is still gets me every year. And each year I find new things that I enjoy growing or witnessing, and the fruit trees are incredible, and watching those mature and getting better and better each year at taking care of those, the pruning, the maintenance, all of that. So I do love it all, and especially there's moments where, oh my god, blackberries are my absolute favorite because they produce so well, and they're delicious and beautiful, and they produce for so long. But I always sort of come back to garlic as this mainstay in the favorite category, and here's why. You plant in the fall, late October, early November, and you're saving seed every year if you can. So I have seed from 2016. I planted in 2016 and harvested in 2017. I have seed from then originally that I'm still planting today. So there's still some of that original genetics happening, but each year is becoming sort of more and more endemic, like to our soil and to our farm. But you plant it in the fall. It's the first thing that you see in the spring, standing upright. Everything's still very brown and dormant, but there are these little soldiers, green and proud, sticking up out of the ground, the cold, hard ground. And there's something about that first look at spring and the first look at the awakening and the rebirth of the land that always gets me. It always provides some sort of like promise for the year. And then in May, like right now, we're harvesting spring garlic. So that's going to some of the chefs and into the farm store. And that's just the young plant that hasn't bulbed up yet. So it sort of looks like a leek. And then in June, we will be harvesting the scapes, the garlic scapes.
Yes.
Which I love. And then in July, typically is when they're fully mature and you start to see the stalk dry out. Or if you leave one of the scapes on, they will become fully upright and start to show their flower. And so, the garlic is pretty much done and ready to be pulled. You pull it out then, and that's considered fresh garlic. And then you hang it to dry. And then in August sometime, it's fully dried and ready to be stored. So there's just something about the length of the process and all the different stages and the ways you get to harvest and enjoy this singular crop that I think is beautiful. And I love every aspect of it. And I've also really appreciated that garlic is something that's used in many different cuisines globally. Garlic is usually the answer I give. Like, I do love the garlic. And planting is usually fun. It's usually something we get some volunteers, some friends to come and do with us in the fall. And it's like usually a really nice day.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like one of the last things you do.
It's not one of the most challenging crops to grow, you would say, but it's one you would say you enjoy the most.
I've had some terrible years with garlic. I planted it in the wrong part of the farm, or the soil wasn't prepared enough, or the seed was too small. And if you get a couple good cultivations, whether that's with a hand tool or with a cultivating tractor, and you knock the weeds back, it's great. It's lovely. It's easy, easier than other crops. But I've lost some significant amounts of garlic. The hard, ground was too hard. It was like impossible to pull them out. They grew too small, didn't get enough water, overgrown with weeds. So it's not, there's no one thing on the farm that's easy ever, but yeah, garlic's just one of those things that's been with us since the first year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about that as well that reminds me of the journey of the farm.
And then I had, I think, two other questions. One would be, what's next for Treiber Farms, and any new projects or expansions or other ideas that you're thinking of going, like, in the coming years?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I, tried a lot of things over the years, and each year definitely refining and saying, what is it that we do and don't want to do? I think even more importantly, what we don't want to do. Whether that's business, marketing, how we sell, who we sell to, and really, what do we grow? And so this year, big focus on taking care of the perennial fruits. That's the berries and the fruit trees, and focusing on cut greens, focusing on tomatoes, and value-added products. And so having really delicious, consistent jarred goods for folks. And that would sort of also include, because it's in a jar, our honey. So we've doubled the size of our apiary to produce more honey, because we looked at the sales lists last year and from the market and just in general, and honey, jam, fruit, any of the berries we bring to market, and tomatoes and greens. And if you read any sort of market gardening book, you'd see that, like indoor tomatoes, cut greens, cucumbers, fruit, are always going to be sort of like top of the list of profit makers. And at the end of the day, it is a business. So you want to like think about those things. And so, yeah, always refining. And, this year, we're growing the most amount of greens we've ever grown. And right now we have spinach and arugula and salad mix and the requisite radishes, which are great in the spring. So yeah, that's each year just trying to be better, working smarter, finding efficiencies. So that's always going to be a thing for us at Treiber. And then something that's not necessarily going to produce income immediately or maybe ever, is just planting a ton of trees. We have a lot of property, and I've thought about different areas where I'd like a windbreak, because it's super windy out here, pretty much year round, the winter especially. And the New York State DEC, and I'm like a New York State DEC plant sale evangelist. So they have the spring plant sale every year. They have a big nursery in Saratoga, and it's 25 trees for $30, and you're getting like really good seedling stock. And so essentially they'll ship you these like big brown paper bags with, a year or two old trees in them. And they have this big list, and you have to like call and order like it's yesteryear, like you're calling a catalog.
Yeah.
And stuff sells out really quickly, and it's really quality products and very inexpensive. And, they have packages too, or like the Long Island packet, where it's, getting things that are endemic to this part of Long Island, or just part of Long Island. So it's like Virginia rose, bare oak, and bayberry, which you'll see everywhere, especially like over on the beaches. So, the last 2 or 3 years I've been purchasing from them, and I'm talking like hundreds of trees. And so this year we've planted probably over 200 trees around the farm.
Wow.
And some were in nursery beds that I bought last year and then planted out this year. And, this is like along the berm out by 48. And this is like in the farm field, along fence lines, in front of our high tunnel, over in my yard, in my house. And it's black oak, black walnut. And there's also some trees that I got for free from somebody in the Hamptons. Dawn redwood, sawtooth oak, white oak, some different types of maples, American hornbeam, beach plum, American hazelnut, witch hazel, hybrid poplar, the bare oak, the Virginia rose, the bayberry, prairie willow, silky dogwood, to name a bunch. And yeah, that's just something. Some of those, I'll never in my lifetime see them in their like full glory. I mean, like the black oak, the black walnut. I mean, those are like trees that'll grow well beyond my existence. And I think that's really cool. And I like the idea of planting things that will be here for a very long time and will provide stability for the soil, and they will provide habitat and windbreaks to sort of create like more of a little microclimate back in the orchard. And just adding to the soil.
Yes.
Yeah, adding to the overall sort of ecosystem. And, we planted these hybrid poplars along the road inside the east side of the property. And we got them last year in the spring, and I think they grew 11 feet in 1 year, which is just so cool. Trees are so cool. And there's already birds landing in them, and they're leafing out, and just creating biodiversity and finding different ways to honestly enjoy different aspects of the farm, and discovering that I like the idea of sort of envisioning the landscape. I've always thought of the whole property as one sort of giant ecosystem and one sort of conversation. Everyone's talking to each other and always wanting it to be a place that everyone wants to be, humans and otherwise, from soil microorganisms to birds and snakes and turtles and birds. So that's something I'm really excited about, and I sort of keep talking about. And then also, lastly, is we have a friend of ours who's leased 3 acres from us, and I always like talking about Benford Lepley is his name, and he has been collecting apple and pear genetics from all over Long Island for probably the better part of a decade. And he had his own little nursery in Nassau County, and he's got apple trees that he has identified as being certain varieties, but he's also named a bunch. And there's some that are from the Cross Island Parkway, the Meadowbrook Parkway. This is like, we've got one that we've planted out in some of our rows called the Meadowbrook Sour, and it's from like the exit ramp off of Meadowbrook Parkway. And some tree guys were cutting down the tree, and Ben like jumped out of his car and like took some cuttings. And so as far as we know, this tree is extinct on Long Island, but we have the genetics growing out on our farm. And so he's moved his nursery to our farm, and he's planted 1 full acre thus far with all these different types of apple and pear genetics from all over the Northeast, and maybe even, from the South or Washington or Minnesota. And it's just like this whole library of fruit genetics that I don't know anyone that has anything like this on Long Island. And before he moved his operation to our farm, I was the first place to grow out any of his stock, or one of the first places to grow out any of his stock on Long Island, which is really cool. So mixed in with some of our more like commercial, varietals that we planted years ago. I have some really cool like cider varietals and some crab trees, and we've done some grafting onto existing rootstock that we have with some pears. And trees are really definitely where my brain has been at, and I just like the potential for creating beautiful spaces and sort of shaping the landscape for the better. And so it's a big part of it. To answer your question, like what is the future for Treiber Farms, and just getting better at taking care of what we have, and just keeping it up, keeping up the soil, and creating a space that we want to be on and that we want to be sharing with people.
And just lastly, what would be your hopes for the future of the North Fork and its community down the line? What would you hope to see? It doesn't have to be directly with farming on the North Fork, but just as a whole for the community.
I think, I've been here for 9 years now, and it's and I started coming out, I didn't mention, but I started coming out here when I was a kid. My grandparents lived out here my whole life in Southold, and then my parents got their place in the mid-90s in Orient. And I've got some aunts and uncles that live out here, full-time and part-time. My sister lives out here with her kids. My other sister visits all the time. Yeah, I think I hope that some sort of like clear identity of this place starts to develop over the years. It feels like it's in a very much a sort of like liminal space right now, this sort of in between, because it used to be like really quiet, rural, agricultural town with some summer people. Now it's sort of like very much a, half the homes are second homes or pretty close to it. And I just hope that it becomes more of a full-time place and not super busy. I like the pace of things, and I like the 4 seasons, and I like that winter's super quiet. But, I'd love to see some more families settling out here and some younger people and a more year-round community. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I'd like and hope for is a place where, we can be getting together 12 months out of the year and running businesses and supporting each other and living well 12 months out of the year. And the conversation that happens a lot with business owners or anybody that works out here is that, especially business owners, but you're just kind of, you make all your money in a couple of months and then you sort of like limp into April again the next year and you do it all over again, and you sprint and then relax and sprint and relax. So just to find more of a balance and more of a year-round community feel out here would be great. And, fill up some of these neighborhoods with some year-rounders. And that's something that's floated across my mind over the years. And, I do like the downtime, the downbeat in the winter, but it'd be nice if it was like a little more spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so extremes on either end, but no, definitely. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and all the wonderful work you're doing on the farm out here.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 137 with Peter Treiber Jr. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.